Hello, and welcome back to Perspectives with
The Seth.
and Martina. I just figured like this, you had to switch it up every now and then because L does come before M.
It
Um,
is true.
so we want to keep it alphabetical over here. But yes, welcome back, folks. Um, if you've been tuning in, we've been talking about selfishness of America, which if you have listened to us over the last few years, it's nothing new. It's nothing surprising for us to talk about. We just have created a mini series here. Just wanted to get a little bit more concrete of what we mean when we say selfishness of America. So yes, if you have not listened, which I guess technically you don't have to listen in order, but it would mean a lot if you go back and start with the first part. And we really talked about American culture. We're talking about selfishness of America. So a big part of that is just, are some things that we do as Americans inherit, or is it things we pick up in an environmental surroundings, which is always goes back to nature versus nurture, which applies to culture as well. So I think, today we're just gonna, wrap up this series and just kind of bringing a few things to a conclusion and some of our last thoughts that we have, which is not the end, as you all know, because do we ever finish the topic? We do.
No.
I mean, it's just so much. It's so much to do. It's something always happening. So I'm like, this will be the end for now until we come back and focus on this again. So I'm gonna throw it over to my lovely co-host for her to add in some words.
Tell me like some words. No, yeah, I'll agree with what you said of how this will be the episode we'll kind of wrap up this little mini series on. But I think the last episode we even said there's so much to uncover, so much to just explore that we could probably spend the rest of the year just talking about this and exploring. But I think one thing that we'll kind of see, and we alluded to in some of the previous episodes around this topic, is that so much of what we touch on and talk about kind of feed into this idea of the selfishness of America and our culture, our society as a whole, and really kind of seeing all those things come together. Because even I remember that in the last episode, so go back and listen to that one, I even said something along the lines of, I'm processing this in real time, and there's so much that I'm connecting dots to that it's just inherently what I think is going to end up happening with particularly this series. And I think as we start going into different topics and different things, we'll be able to connect back to this series, and it'll just continue on from that. Because I think one of the questions we posed at the last episode, or we kind of touched on a little bit, was, is American culture inherently selfish? Like, is it just selfish because of how this country was founded, how it continues to operate? We look at, we are a very capitalistic society, and capitalism is very me, myself, and I, and I'm gonna get what's mine first, and then good luck to whoever is next, whoever is behind me. I think, and I think that's where I think we can kick off. That could just be where we start, where if we look back and we look at some of the conversations we had, particularly around convenience. I think we spent some bulk of the time talking about convenience in its different iterations. We think about convenience of like mobile ordering, and now like for Target, I could just pick up curbside, don't even have to go into the store, and just be like, bring my stuff out and I'm gonna go home now. There is this lot of convenience around it, but I think what's driven America to its, whether you want to call it success or its position of power in the world, when I think back, and it's me just kind of real time thinking and processing through is the idea of convenience. I mean, you inconvenience others and you degrade others and you do this, and it's been for the convenience of one particular race in this country has been the priority, and we continue to see it play out. That's where my thoughts at right now. Well, I'm gonna kick it back to you, Martina.
I have so many words. I have thoughts, I should say. So you mentioned Target, because a lot of this, well, things got somewhat more convenient during the pandemic for people, which is, kind of like oxymoron in a way.
Yeah.
So you mentioned picking up curbside. I just think like, I do not have a car. I don't know if I've mentioned that on here or not. And so my main points of transportation is I take the CTA or I Uber, or my lovely friends will give me a ride every now and then. But basically, I really don't have to leave my house, And being an introvert, being at home is probably my favorite thing to do anyway. It is like I love being at home. This is why I love the convenience of home, and the convenience that if I literally, which I do leave my house, I have to sometimes, but in the instance that I don't want to, I can literally have Target delivered to me probably in under 2 hours, maybe if that long. And Target's only like a 10-minute walk from me, so I try not to. I don't do that, but I'm just saying. But if you talk about very much convenience,
Yep.
That is a big part of it. And I think you said something too. I'm trying to think back to what you were saying right after you talked about that part about being mobile, like having mobile options. You mentioned something. Oh, talking about, is convenience just something that's inherently American? Where did it start? How did we get here? And it just made me think about, so interesting for a country as young as we are, kind of compared to other countries, is that originally the non-colored people who decided to come here were seeking religious and political and just independence and freedom from Great Britain. So it's just always so interesting to me that those same people left an oppressed situation and have come here to the United States and just basically oppressed other people. And it's, and so it just kind of made me think about, convenience. I don't think it necessarily started with people of color. Like we said, it wasn't necessarily created for us. I don't think, and it makes me like, do people even think about the convenience part of it? I think about convenience a lot, actually, because I hate being inconvenienced.
Yeah.
I do not like being.
I think most people don't like being inconvenienced.
Most people don't like being inconvenienced, but it does beg to differ. Like, I feel somewhere along the way, non-white Americans started to participate, I guess, in some of these things of convenience that wasn't necessarily geared towards them. Because now I know just as many people of color, hey, like they're gonna do that Instacart order because they're not doing it. They're not getting up and leaving their house. And people will pay a little, because obviously when you make these such orders or even having things shipped to your house, you're paying a little bit extra money for that convenience. And for most of us, I don't think we really even like. Sometimes if it's just ridiculously priced, then it will stand out. But most of us, we don't really blink an eye at just maybe a few dollars. We're like, oh, I know I'm paying for this convenience. So it kind of made me think of that. And then I wanted to give an example of an American abroad. When I thought about myself, again, I'm making it about me, convenient, right?
Hey.
Briefly, I'll say I was in Europe about 2 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago. And, I always keep it in my mind how when I'm an American in another country, I know things are not geared towards me. That's not my country, so I always try to come into another country with an open mind, because pretty much everybody hates Americans anyway. That's why I say, sometimes I say I'm from Canada. So, it's a little different, but I don't know how much better Canada is. But anyway, so when I was in France and we were staying in the Airbnb, I think I was doing pretty good, but they don't have air conditioning over there. Not like we do.
Mm-mm.
And they don't drink water as much as we do. And I'm a big water person. I mean, you always see me, I'm always drinking water. I just drink water. And I take that for, I take it for granted, having the convenience of being able to turn my AC down as much as I want to and being able to drink as much as water as I want to. So when we went to the Airbnb and the AC didn't go down any lower than probably like 69, and they didn't even have any water in the fridge, that is when my American started to come out. My American side started to come out because they were inconvenienced.
American side.
My American side, because sometimes I don't like being American. But my American side came out, and I was just like, so I was like, I told my friends I was traveling with. I was like, you see, I was trying. I'm trying to acknowledge that I'm in another country, acknowledging the people, the language. But it's hot as hell in the summertime. And near the south of France, they have the Mediterranean type weather, which is humid, just like it can get humid here in Chicago. Although, I think Chicago is not as humid as the South, but y'all get what I'm saying. Very humid climate. And how y'all AC gonna go down lower than 69? And again, I know people like Europe is a very old, continent. It's a lot of old countries. I get it, but that's just an example of me that I wanted to share about. Because I think I was, of course, taking it back to, was I selfish? And how I try not to be selfish. When I particularly try not to be selfish when I'm traveling to another country, because I know people hate us so much. But in that instance, I was just like, the American side came out of me. And it just made me think about, you know what, Martina, just suck it up and do it. And I did, because I had no other choice. But it did teach me, I will stick to my off-season travel, because that was a big inconvenience for me. That's what I learned.
Oh my goodness.
Selfishness in another country.
Your American selfishness.
The American selfishness. I had to bring it full circle, but yes.
But it's one of those things, right? It's so true, right? We see social media, all these things, Americans abroad, and the entitlement that comes with sometimes being an American abroad, and expecting, whatever you have here in the US to be, there, whatever country you are. Like, I think about like Mexico, like, oh my God, they should be speaking English, because I see people say that. And I'm like, you're in their country. Why should they speak your language? You should make every attempt to speak their language. Same if you go to France or any other country, like but there is this inherent expectation of
people catering to us.
Yes. And it's like, no, that shouldn't be it. But again, is it just the culture that we're in, the society, this American society, where it breeds this sense of entitlement, of like going to a different country and expecting things to be the same, or sort of have the same amenities, the same conveniences, and like cater to me because I'm American, because that's what you see. And for the most part, it tends to be white Americans who have more of that entitlement, because as you made every effort to be like, no, I am consciously not going to act that way because I know better. And I think so. It's interesting because then you get into more of the nuance of, I know we've talked about on our channel about Black culture, right? You have Black culture, and then you have Asian culture, and you have Latino Hispanic culture, and then you have subsets of Hispanic Latino cultures and within it. And then you have this white American culture. And for the most part, that's very separate and very different to, because you will find some similarities among maybe Black, Latino, Hispanic, even Asian cultures. You'll find some similarities, and you'll find some sort of common kind of ground.
Yeah.
But a lot of the debate and discussions ends up coming from more of like, white American culture versus all these other kind of iterations. So I think that also plays into it of just um whether it's cultural norms or things that we traditions we grew up because for all it is, I mean, America is still very much a country of immigrants, the people that
Yeah.
came and continue to come to this country and sort of feed into or kind of deposit from their culture into this American culture. But as we have seen throughout history, even recent years, even just recently, the last couple months, there is this fight to keep what I would define as white American culture, the dominant culture, and sort of keep it and be like, this, we're going to keep this one way or another. And we're going to make sure that it continues on because we don't want anybody else to influence it. And it drives this, uh, you know, we look at our, policies, legislations and laws and just things that have continued to be enacted in our country to just kind of drive this. And this to me now is like, is it more of this white American culture selfishness that exists that then we as people of color get influenced or get sort of, caught up in the whole thing of it because there's certain things that I would never do as as a Mexican American that like I see others do. I'm like, yeah, no way. My mama would hit me. My mom like you're
Um,
like,
but
someone is gonna correct me because there is no way you do that. And we see, I mean, y'all know we love TikTok. So on my TikTok, I see people like, oh my God, if I was to respond that way to my mother, if I was to do that to even a stranger, or like, no way I could get away with that. So I think you have these, I mean, we operate in sort of different spheres of cultures and different things where it all feeds in. So it's like, where does this selfishness come from? Where I'm like, because
yeah,
from my viewpoint, it comes from a very specific group in the United States that then kind of has influenced other cultures and other ethnicities and things like that, where it's like maybe our countries where we came from, at the end of the day, is it white supremacy that has just developed this selfishness that just kind of has permeated into the world.
you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to be like, because we talk about obviously white supremacy. That's
Yeah.
just that's an extension of white supremacy.
Mhm.
And we think about, where does this, because, and you and I talked about American culture earlier in the series where we talked about what the hell is American culture. We were talking about like sports and
Mhm.
fast food. We were talking about what are things that we think,
Yeah.
especially other people outside of America, when they think American culture.
Yeah.
We were talking about that. And so it is kind of, when I think about American culture and how culture is defined in America for the broader, it does stem from white supremacy.
Yeah.
You and I have talked about, how can we not operate within all of us operate within white
Yeah.
supremacy every day, whether you want to acknowledge it or whether you can't imagine it, we all do, and so I think all of us have, because we are Americans, we
Yeah.
have operated in this white American culture as well, because like you say, it's kind of permeated, because that's the whole point. White
Yeah.
supremacy,
Yep.
white culture, they want to be the dominant
Mhm.
culture. And to me, again, like we've talked about in the past, it's about control, it's about dominance. And, you're talking about the different policies and things that are happening now just across the country. I see that as just as a way of control. And it's unfortunate because when you get on social media platforms like a TikTok or an Instagram or any of the other ones, this is how other countries are defining America right now. They're like,
Yeah.
this is a part of their culture. Like all they do is shoot each other up. They try to control people's bodies.
Yep.
And this is what other countries are thinking, that this is just a part of America right
Yeah.
now. And I really hate that. To me, that bothers me. And I'm sure like to those who are how do I say it? I was going to say a part of the white supremacist, well, I guess so, a part of the, actively a part of the white supremacist culture,
Mhm.
that's what they're going for. They want, people to not have freedom of choice, whether it's their own medical history, medical illnesses, education. They want it to all be under white supremacists, like this white supremacist way of doing things.
Yeah.
And so they just continue to kind of take all the different things that we had moved so far ahead of in this country.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting now that we have a Supreme Court who's like really just taking us back. And it's just really like they're trying to get back to that old white supremacist culture. Okay. They trying to even the ones of color up there, they ain't no good either. They ain't no good. They need to go. They need to go. Because every time there's a vote, it's 6-3 every damn time.
Every time.
Every time. And that's the way it's gonna be. But I was about to get a little bit too political with that. I was about to bring up Hillary Clinton. Okay.
I mean, we might as well go into it because we're here.
Like if we all just would have voted for Hillary back in the day, we wouldn't be here. We got countries like Florida is already a world.
They'll be called Florida country.
They basically a country. Florida.
They could be. Go away.
Florida could be so in this sense they are a country. The country of Florida, okay? They are out here, honey, test stripping everybody rights away. For those fortunate and have the resources enough, they're able to move. I mean, we've heard of athletes moving because it's not safe for them. They're either people of color or they have, trans kids in their family. So it's a lot of reasons people are moving out of the country of Florida because they are losing their minds. But I was just always think, we have this one way how we've had American culture defined, which I think traditionally has been like the pickup trucks and fast food, everything's supersized, which I'm sure countries, they still identify with that now. But now it's like this new white culture that's emerging to me, or maybe, I won't say emerging, it's resurfacing. Because
resurfacing.
It never went away.
It's holding on to dear life. It's trying to hold on.
It is holding on, and the country of Florida is trying to hold on as much as they can. Okay, they're trying to, everybody who has any sense is trying to leave, or they have been able to leave, but everybody can't leave. That's going to become another issue as well. We have people that are going to be stuck in some of these places, and all these unfortunate things are happening, and people just sitting around twiddle-dee, twiddle-dum. But yeah, I just really had to touch on that because the whole thing about, I just feel like we're entering a whole new white culture in America on top of already the other negativity. And it's gonna, I think, it's just so interesting because when I think of the political parties we have here in the United States, primary Republican and Democrat, to me, a lot of the Republican side is often like, it is your problem, it's not our problem. And we're going to make sure that we control everything. So you have no say so at all. We don't want you being able to think for yourself at all. And that's kind of where I'm at right now with that.
I mean, you brought up a lot of points, and I'm going to try to gather my thoughts around, but I'll kind of start the last one because I think the obviously the two-party system, I mean, it has to be revisited. We need to figure something new out there because, when you lump all Democrats, some of them are still very conservative, very, and it's cool. If that's how you want to be, that's your right and all that, but we need progressiveness to kind of come through a little bit. We need a combination of some moderate progressiveness happening here. That's a whole other episode. But I think about what you said about Republicans and how they continue to be like, it's somebody else's problem. It's not our problem. We're not going to fix it. It's, deal with it. It's always poor people's problems. Because think about it, because I'm still pissed off because the student loan um vote that the Supreme Court just was like, nope, we're not going to help you, but y'all help billionaires and y'all help millionaires out here with these companies and these PPP loans that y'all just forgave, and we're like, oh, don't worry about it. You go ahead and it's okay because you benefit from it. Because there's people in government in positions of power who benefit from those being forgiven, and they get to just pocket that money.
Yes.
Versus, millions of students out here, people with student loan debt, people that did what society told you to do and set you up to be like, hey, you paid this off. I heard people were like, but it's good debt. Like, student loan is good debt. No, there's no such thing as good debt.
Still debt.
Like it's debt. And this is a debt that for some reason won't go away. It doesn't matter how much you pay off. There's people who've been having debt for 30, 50 years and just aren't able to get rid of it.
I mean, I haven't been here 40 years yet, but
the rate it's going.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where it's like, why is it always, I mean, I know why, and I'm just posing a hypothetical question on here, but it always is like poor people, yeah, pick yourself up by your own bootstraps, figure it out on your own. But when it's the wealthy, because it's not even just rich, it's the wealthy who benefit from all these things. Like when it's the wealthy, it's like, oh, let's figure it out.
Primarily wealthy white people. Yes.
Like, we'll figure something out, because you all shouldn't be paying more taxes. You all shouldn't be doing like, and we'll give you tax breaks. And I'm like, no, I need a tax break. I should get some. Dude, Biden wasn't even asking for people to all of their student loan to be forgiven. It was $20,000, up to $20,000, and I'm like, you're acting out here like you're forgiving billions of dollars out here. Everybody's gone.
I know.
I'm like, no, up to $20,000.
That's not a lot.
And not everyone was going to get the $20,000 either. So it's like, yeah, it just trips me out, because it's like, but then I think the conversation we're having to me, there is this inherent selfishness of like, hey, we are people. When we get to be people of power and we get to a certain tax bracket, we get to make choices for others, and we will make choices that are going to benefit who we think will benefit the most, who we think, and it's usually white, wealthy individuals. And then you have some wealthy people of color out here who benefit from it too.
Yes.
And I think that's why, because we talked about this proximity to whiteness, you have lots of people of color who get a taste of that proximity to whiteness, and they're like, oh, I kind of like this. So I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that I just keep it. But they still see you as Black, as Latino, like your skin color is still there. They're just tolerating you because you got some money and you might have some pull here and there. But they don't always respect you. They don't always, think highly of you. They just kind of tolerate you. But because you crave that proximity to whiteness, I mean, we talked about this a couple series ago, like this proximity to whiteness that we all kind of have to battle a lot of the times as Black and brown women, and be like, do we go for that, or do we help the person that's behind me to lift them up and bring them along? Or am I just going to sell out and be like, you know what? It's convenient for me, so I'm just going to stay right here and I'm going to close this door and gatekeep as much as I can because I want to keep moving up. But that's the dominant culture that we've been sort of brushing and talking about, because that's the way it operates. And I think about, you mentioned also about how, those that came from Britain were, running away from religious persecution. In some of my sort of exploration about religion and evangelicalism and sort of the progressiveness that's coming into more of evangelical Christianity in the country, there's those that I've read who have said that the Christians that left, the Protestants that left Britain, were like the fringe Christians, what you would call right now, like those that were,
the Scientologists. It's
Yeah,
science
like
houses. That's what they
like
are.
or just had like some really crazy out there um theology or just things like that where it just wasn't like it just was like, yo, y'all are reading the Bible completely off base. Like it was just what we would call now these really like radical, like out here Christian or conservative Christians, just like very like, no, like you're what Bible you're reading is not the same one the rest of us are reading, which is what some people say were those Christians that came to this country looking who were being persecuted were because you all were out here reading a different Bible than the rest of the people in Great Britain.
They had to be.
They brought those ideals here, and that was the foundation of what now you have this Christian nationalism. And you have this nationalism around Christianity, and that was like the basis of it. Because let me tell you, the Christianity I know and the Christianity that is more white Christianity in this country, completely different. I'm like the evangelical Christian that I know and I grew up in and I sort of have versus the white evangelical Christianity, completely different. So I think there's there's that sort of thing that also dives into, and it's much more so the nationalistic Christianity, national Christianity, whatever it's called, evangelical Christians out here, that is much more driven by a selfishness, much more driven by by none of the ideas and none of the values of Jesus. So another thing to explore, we're going to run out of time anyway, but another thing we'll have to eventually explore in the future is sort of this Christian nationalism and the stark difference between some understanding of Christianity and what is more of the prominent popular Christianity, and how it just completely conflicts each other when I think of what Jesus talked and preached and what he did versus what some white Christians out here be talking about and be spewing out here. And I'm like, there's no, you don't even meet in the middle. Like you're here's Jesus and y'all over here.
It's either black or white. There is no gray.
And I think that also contributes to this selfishness, because as we continue to see, Christianity continues to play a huge role in our politics, a huge role in decisions of the Supreme Court, decisions of like politicians in this country. And there isn't that separation of church and state a lot of the times. I think that's also a part of what drives some of the selfishness in this country too. And as a Christian, it makes me really sad to see Christianity being used as a weapon and being used as something to separate and sort of divide. Because like I said, Jesus, that's not the teaching. Like you read the New Testament, completely different to what you hear some of these preachers out here. And they're not all white. I know that. Like I know there's plenty of others who subscribe to that mentality and that.
But where do they get it from? Where do they get it from?
Yes. But again, go back to that proximity to whiteness. You have these pastors, these leaders, these church leaders who are either Black, Latino, Asians, run the gamut, who are out here really kind of spewing these crazy ideas and these crazy kind of thoughts, and who end up having positions of power and influence in our politics and in our legislations, and it just kind of is unfortunate.
No, you don't say it too much for me to try to.
I know. That's why I said, like, man, I went way.
I wait because I was listening. I want to say, like, I've been thinking about the Salem witch trials, which one of the things that if you were considered a witch, they would do the dunk you in the water, and if you did not float to the top, you were not considered a witch. So basically, if you died, you were not considered a witch. So I think it's like something like that. So if you drowned, you were not considered a witch. So you basically have to be to like not be considered. So it just made me think about the fringeness of the group of British folk who came over here hundreds of years ago.
Yeah.
Um, so that was very interesting to hear because they were doing some weird stuff. Like it just so that just kind of brought to mind. And then I'm thinking about the larger, like we're talking about Christianity and the role that it plays in selfishness, which should be the opposite. But we got a lot of greedy people, and greedy people are some of them proclaim to be Christians as well. Which I guess doesn't mean you can't be a Christian if you're greedy. But that's another topic for another day. We're gonna have to dissect that a little bit more. But I'm talking about the more greedy, like the ones that we see in the news. And it's just always surprising to me, the selfishness behind it. Because, when you have, like you said, politics, the more conservative, evangelistic politics or Christians, it exists in the more Republican, conservative side of things. And where it's supposed to be all kumbaya and we're all together. But then to me, it goes back to wanting to have control over everything that everyone is doing. And you as a pastor, or you in any sort of religious leader in the church, should know better than that. And you're banking that other people are going to be so gung-ho for Jesus that they're just going to follow you right along. And we got some people that are following right along. And honey, I don't think they know what they're following right along to. I think they just following right along because obviously we know that a lot of these different groups and these different conservative political figures, they like cater to that all the time. They cater to white people, white culture, being afraid of the other. Whatever the other is, okay, they cater to that. And white people, some of them, bless your hearts, y'all be falling right into that. I mean, I don't even want to get started on some of the other stuff because that'll be here too long. But it's just really, to me, is how sometimes you lose the ability to think for yourself.
Yeah.
And I noticed that it almost put me in the mind of a cult. I think in a way, a lot of it just to follow something. Because to me, I'm thinking, do people really believe? Do you really think that all children shouldn't be educated to the best of the country's abilities? Like, is this really it? Like, because I'm a firm believer in separation of church and state, and I am a Christian. I affirm they should not operate together. They are very different because everybody's not religious. Everybody's not a Christian. And so I think you shouldn't force ideology onto anybody. That's just me. You can't force somebody to do something that they don't want to do. And the Republicans, again, like I think it's really comes down to the rules only apply to them. It doesn't apply to anybody else. They can do whatever they want, how they want to do it, when they want to do it. Oh, and it's just the way it's going to be. Because when I think about, we look at both sides of the aisle, both of them are real fucked up. And really, I don't think one is better than the other, obviously. But just sitting back, being almost like a spectator in my own country, and watching these things just happen. And when I talk about these things, the different policies that are coming out, you're talking about student loans, affirmative action is, gone away like it never happened. These states say these things are unconstitutional. First, the government need to make up its mind, baby. What is constitutional and what is not constitutional? Because I'm tired of hearing this is constitutional, this is not constitutional. You keep going back and forth and you're changing your mind. Again, what's going to benefit that person or that party or that group? And so to me, it's just like, which is it? Is it unconstitutional or is it constitutional? Because are you going to come back in 10 years and say affirmative action is constitutional? It's completely fine. Okay, then why did you say it was unconstitutional? It just seems like there's so much political muck in the United States right now that to me, it baffles me. And I am embarrassed when I think of other countries watching us. This is so embarrassing. We all are not like that. Please know, it's just really embarrassing to sit back and to watch the humanity be sucked out.
Yeah.
All these different policies and regulations, they're losing all humanity. And you say, oh, we care about this, that, and another, but you don't. You really don't. you're here for your own selfish, greedy reasons.
Yeah.
Um, and I think, we're getting close to time, so I won't go too much into it. But this idea here that you touched on about the ultra wealthy, generally white people of this country. And it makes me think, like, when we do this, the next iteration of this series, how
Yeah.
did we get so disconnected from rich and poor? It's like,
Mhm.
what it's like, and the thing is, okay, we got to disconnect. Let's try to fix it. Obviously, it doesn't seem like this country is doing much to fix it, which again ties us back to nonprofits, which we did a whole series on.
Yeah.
Nonprofits are out here doing a lot of the work that government should be doing. And that's just how I'm always going to see it. It's not, is there's no other way I'm probably ever going to see that. So just it makes me think, and like I'll continue to think about this, like, where in this country did we just decide to not care about the person? Because this is one moment where you should care about the individual
Mhm.
as well as the group. So it really is, on my mind for next time. How did we're so far, like the rich and the poor are so far, and in this country there's nothing, at least I can see, that's effectively working.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know everything that's happening in the country, so if anybody know in the comments, enlighten me. I would love to hear your thoughts and more about it. But it doesn't seem like enough is being done to help the people in this country who are less fortunate. Not even talking about like people who can't pay for college. We're talking about people who can't even afford toilet paper, you
Yeah.
know? So how did we get to this in this country, and where it's basically okay, which I think is that's what we've been saying about selfishness of America. But that's just some thoughts I have for another time.
No, I know there's so yeah, there's so much to continue talking about, but I think we'll start wrapping up. But the one thing I'll say, and sort of that you kind of sparked in my brain, I think there is a conversation to be had, a discussion or exploration of race. I mean, we know that racism, and we know that drives a lot of the things that happen in this country, and a lot of the, you know, the structures, the legislations, the policies, things that are put in place. But when you were asking that question of how did we get here, how is there's this huge disconnect, I, we probably can trace it back and have a conversation of the the role that race plays in that. I mean, if we look at statistics on who falls on more on the side of being poor in this country, probably going to find a lot of people of color. Um, and you'll have, whites mixed in there, but as we know, dominant culture is willing to sacrifice themselves to keep their dominance. I mean, that's
They'll
just,
sacrifice each other.
yeah, and it's one of those things. I think that there is more to explore on there, and probably just have others be part of this conversation that probably can shed some more light into this conversation, whether it's the religious side of things and sort of the Christianity, but definitely looking more into race and can we, if we go back in history, where are those, those points in time, can we pinpoint to where, some of these things, just the barriers and everything just kind of grew, and sort of this disparities kind of grew more, and these gaps became wider and wider. Probably we'll look and we'll see when civil rights movements were coming, and Black Americans were getting rights. That's probably why we'll see why we saw more legislations and more things put into place. And you brought up affirmative action, and we all know in studies, statistics, everything shows that white women benefited most out of affirmative action. And so there's just a lot to unpack. I think that's just the theme of this series in general, of this selfishness of America, that I think there's just so much to unpack. There's so much more to discover and talk about. We discovered a lot during these 40 odd minutes that we've been talking and sort of and seeing, but definitely a lot more to, I think, to come uh for the series. Things that are probably going to branch out of these conversations, and we'll kind of circle back to, I think, Christianity is probably one that will talk, and just the role that faith plays in a lot of these topics, I think, is one we'll explore, and definitely more into that chasm that continues to just become bigger and bigger between, you have poor, you have kind of poor, you don't have a middle class anymore.
I was
In
gonna say
here,
you have like the broke. I can be broke A. Okay.
broke, have
Excellent.
the brocade.
Broke A. You can be broke. It's like a whole different broke A.
Yes.
You know. Yeah,
But then
there's so
you
many
have,
variations. You're
yeah,
right.
but then you have rich, and then you have ultra rich and ultra wealthy, and that 1% that we ain't, I don't see myself ever becoming near that
You know
1%.
who they all are.
I
Those,
mean,
yes, we have people that
those are the
have
ones that scare me, because I'm like, who are you and what role are you playing in our society right now? And how you, because we're also kind of conspiracists out here sometimes, once in a while, but there is a lot to sort of discuss and see. But if you all that are either watching or listening have any thoughts or have any ideas around other conversations or topics to continue exploring that kind of feed into this selfishness of America, please let us know. You can comment on our YouTube channel. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Facebook. And just, contact us and let us know your thoughts on it. Because, yeah, as I'll say again, there's just so many things that have branched out from these conversations that I'm like thinking of like future conversations to circle back and have. But any final thoughts, Martina?
No, I agree with everything you have said to wrap us up. Again, people, please, even if you don't agree, we always say that you don't have to agree with us because we don't always agree with each other. And as long as you are respectful about what you have to say, we would love to hear it. Again, you may think America's not selfish. I would love to know more about it. Maybe you seeing something I don't see. Because I don't know everything. And so one reason we got this platform is because we want to share our ideas with you all, but we want you all to share your ideas and comments and suggestions with us as well. So if I say any more, we're going to run into 2 hours. So that's it for me.
Well, thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us on today and listening. But we'll come back with some more conversations, some more topics, and we look forward to hearing your thoughts and your comments on this one and future videos and podcasts. So thank you again, and we will either talk to you or see you soon.